You're listening to Real Talk Texas with local expert Steve Hakes. Now, here's Steve.
Welcome back. Today in the studio, we have Alicia Trevino of Century 21, and she's one of the top real estate brokers for Century 21 in the Metroplex here, and she's got a great firm. She really has some ways of breaking down for the type of customer that you have, right, Alicia? You have a firm that looks at investors. You have people.
We do investors. We also do resales, and we have move-up buyers. So we have a large company that can help whoever is necessary out there. I know today we're talking about investors, but they all kind of tie in together because once you purchase a home as an investor, then you have to resell it. And we have a lot of experience in that because we have big accounts like HUD and REO accounts, and we've had a lot of experience on it for the last 5 years. That's
great. So you great resource we have in the show today. And let's talk a little bit about investing as far as a buy and hold, and we'll get to the other repositioning later. But let's just say I'm looking to get into the business, and I've been thinking about my retirement. I'd like to have a couple rent houses or some stream of income. How do I get into it? Why would I get into it?
Well, even when we're not in an investment type of environment, I always suggest that somebody get a rent property. Those are very safe investments. You can drive by and see it and touch it. A lot of times people put their money away. They don't know where it's at. But this, you do. You can see it every single day if you want to.
It's not like buying a .com stock where it can go to zero, right?
Right. Yes. You can drive by and see it every single day if you want to. But it's one of the things that I think the average consumer out there can actually do. And if you're a handy person, you can do the work yourself. But then you also have to be really careful. You need to work with a professional who could guide you in, first of all, buying at the right location, doing the right type of repairs. You're talking about buying and holding. So many times, you get overzealous because it's your baby and you start putting in granite countertops or upgraded tiles because it looks good and you're thinking of it as your own personal property. But when you're buying investment property, you have to think of it from the investment point of view, especially if you're buying to hold. You want to put in linoleum instead of ceramic tile because over time, you're going to have to get these renters to come and go. So there's a lot of things that, depending on what you want and how you want to put this investment together, whether you want it for a short term or you want it for the investment for your children's college education, you want to sit down with a professional and talk about the long-term goals that you have for this investment.
Great. And then I can also provide a little help on the financial strategies as well, helping with the math side and really talking about, because there is a different position that I would recommend for somebody that was looking to have it as a retirement fund for them or cash flow for later to supplement their retirement. There's a different strategy if they're just going to buy it and keep it for 3-4 years.
Right.
So that's important to know.
And I think a lot of people don't realize, now in the state of Texas, you can actually take a loan against this investment property. So let's say you buy this property today, you have a newborn, let's say, and you're trying to think about, well, where am I going to get this college money from? This house, if you get a 15-year loan, will be paid for by the time your child goes to college. So you can either pull the money out from there and still keep your investment so you can recycle that money, or you can go ahead and sell it at that time and go ahead and pay for the college fund, or you can just take the payments that you're getting from the rent and pay for tuition. It is a really smart way to invest your money for very little down. What is it, 25% down to
right.
get a rental property today?
Yes.
So on $100,000, if you have $25,000 to invest, this is such a smart move for the average consumer. And I don't think that Americans really think about it because they don't have anybody to guide them in that direction. I can pretty much make anybody a millionaire if they give me an opportunity.
That's great news. Well, we need to do that. That's for sure. Let's talk about the math a little bit. When you're giving people guidance on a house, my brother-in-law's into this business now, and I never thought he'd be in it, but he's really thrown himself into trying to work with people and surround himself with a team and things like that. But one of the things when you're looking to buy a house, a rental property, one of the things I want to bring up to, and I always bring it up to my clients, is you have to allow for vacancies. So when you look at this, it's not going to be rented all the time. And on a single family, it takes a little longer to remarket that. Say they give you a 30-day notice at the end of the lease. So, and you thought they were going to be there forever, which is a mistake sometimes for investors.
Of course.
What's the strategy when you sit down and you say, okay, you can buy this house for $100,000? Then how hard is it to get it rented? How hard is it to manage all of that?
In today's market, it's not very hard to get a rental. We can't keep a rental on the ground.
Really?
So in today's market, it is instant. But I'll be very honest, I've had rent houses for years, probably the last 20 years, and getting them rented is probably not the hard part. Fixing them up after the tenant moves out, I've had rent properties that have been occupied for 10 years by the same tenant, and then I've had rent properties that I've had to go in and put a new tenant in every couple of years. And so there is a misconception on leasing, but what I would do is I would suggest very strongly hire a good property management company. It does take a little part of the profits, especially if you have multiple properties, if you get up to about 10 at a time, or you can do it yourself. Just get with a good realtor who tells you this is, gives you some guidance as to these are some of the pitfalls, this is some of the stuff you want to be aware of. And that way you can manage this property on your own. It's not that hard. I think they even have classes on property management that you can take.
Well, if I came to you and I said, okay, Alicia, I want to get into I want to buy a rent house.
Okay.
I'll start with one, maybe, and then we'll see how that goes. We'll do another one. But what kind of services would you provide me? I mean, as far as would you help me find the renters? Would you give me the advice on what to do as far as cosmetically fixing it up? Or
Of course. First we'd sit down and talk about strategy and long-term and what you're wanting to do over time. And then we'd sit down and we'd talk about not over-investing in a piece of property. So you want to make sure you get the right location, right price point for yourself. I'd also suggest the colors that you want to go in there with. There's investors that I work with and we pick a color palette for them and we do it the same way every single time, and it works out for them. But I will tell you, investing is individualized, and sitting down with a professional realtor to sit down and talk about it. If you're calling somebody and asking them to find you an investment property, and they're not sitting down and asking you what is it that you're needing, then you probably want to reconsider the realtor you're working with.
Well, absolutely. I think, it's like any other thing that you choose in your life as far as financial planning or your accountant or the bank that you deal with. I think it's one of those things where you want to have a personal relationship with that. One of the things I struggle in investment property is how do you know what kind of rent you can get out of it? Is there something you can do there?
There's a market analysis that your realtor can do and show you what the rents are in that area. So it's pretty easy to figure that one out. Another big mistake that people make is I want to get the best possible deal out there. So they end up maybe buying in a neighborhood that doesn't lease really well. The property looks really great on paper. They can get it for $30,000. But then they have a problem with vandalism or the rents are low, it's in the wrong location. So it's much better to have one property in a great location than two properties in a bad location.
Location, huh?
Location.
And so I would come to you for that advice, and you could give me that kind of report. Could you give me a report on what kind of police activity has happened? Is that something else that I should look at? You were talking about getting broken into.
There are websites that you can do that. I don't do that for them, but absolutely, everything's on the internet nowadays, so you can absolutely go to the police department and find out what the criminal activity is in the area. And I would highly suggest it as well. I leave those properties for the experts, but if you're an individual looking to buy an investment property, I would go ahead and buy in the perfect place. I have doctors right now that I'm working with that are buying properties for $400,000 and keeping them and leasing them out. And you think $400,000, that's not an investment property. But when you're looking at today's market, where we are and where we're headed, that's a really smart investment.
Well, one of the things I find is that from a lender standpoint is if you're self-employed, it used to be very easy to get a loan on a mortgage. But today, if you're writing a lot off on your taxes, it may make it more difficult for you to qualify for a loan. So you may go into the rental market. And you may be one of those people that I can afford $3,000-$4,000 a month for a house payment, but I can't qualify for the loan. So I want to live in the right neighborhood, right school districts, things like that. So it makes sense to me that would be maybe a good investment. You know
what? You've touched on a really good point here. I have never had so many high-end leases than I have this year. And $4,000, $5,000 a month may seem like a lot, but it's really not to a professional who doesn't want to invest in a property right now or can't, and some of our doctors are facing that, and accountants, people that own their own companies. Absolutely. That's a really good point.
Let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned accountant. So property management, accounting, things like that. One of the things I want to tell our listeners is, we have at Real Talk Texas real experts that we vet out throughout the Metroplex. And we've had very good CPAs, financial planners, realtors like yourself on the show. And if you're looking for one of those people to help build your team, we'll talk about that in the last segment. So stay tuned if you want to find out how to get those team members signed up for you so you can feel comfortable that you're in good position. Again, I want to throw this out there. If you're looking to become a real estate investor, pull out your cell phone right now, 817-925-2546. That's 817-925-2546. And just simply send us a text that says invest, and we'll put you in touch with the right experts here at Real Talk Texas and get you in the business. Make sure you're comfortable in getting involved in this great opportunity. And we're going to stay tuned because we've got some real facts we're going to share on the next segment about what the experts are saying about the real estate market in 2013 and why it's a good time to invest.